Sponsored by the Big 98, Nashville's #1 for new country and the home of the Bobby Bones Show.
We're so happy to have on an incredible singer, songwriter, folkie. She's also the head of Puff Bunny Records. Taylor Pye, thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Eric. I love being here.
So how's this documentary, Nobody Famous? You know, what a great documentary and award-winning. How did this end up coming about, Taylor?
Through the benefit of having Katherine Harrison as your good friend from high school days at Ray High School in Corpus Christi, Texas.
That is so amazing because I mean, it's, you know, with your history, you know, going back with you know, and I know I'm going to say the band name wrong, so you can help me with it.
The Pozo-Seco Singers.
Pozo-Seco, so I would have had it right. See that, you know, the Pozo-Seco Singers that you were a part of, you know, with Don Williams and your other counterpart in that. You guys had some decent success.
We actually were a folk pop trio that were on the Mike Douglas show. We did Joey Bishop. We did Pat Boone show back in those days. That was an interesting romp. Anyway, we did some really interesting things on national TV and traveled around. That was when college concerts were the staple, you know, the bacon that you brought home from the road. And they were great. It was wonderful working for the college audiences, and music had messages that were really important when you think about it at that time. The Vietnam War was still going on, and the music was changing the political scene because it was pointing out that things needed to change. You know, I was losing friends from Ray High School that I graduated with who went to Vietnam, 18 years old, and came home in a box with a flag. And, you know, it was a really hard time. And yet at the same time, the music portrayed that, but it was very hopeful. You know, like I think about the Youngbloods. They did, "Come on, people now, smile on your brother, everybody get together, love one another right now." I mean,
you know,
so that was
you guys had, you know, 2 songs that were in the top 40 also, Taylor.
Yes, we had "I Can Make It With You, Baby" in Time. I think our first one was on the charts for like 57 weeks or something. It was just like forever.
You know, watching the documentary though, and obviously, you know, researching you, it's kind of interesting to where having the same manager as Peter, Paul and Mary and Bob Dylan was kind of a two-edged sword for you.
It was hard standing on stage especially with Odetta, because I really loved her album. That I just wore her album out, and I wore Baez's first album out. I learned a lot of guitar licks from those early things because everything was very acoustic. But with Odetta, she was such a powerful person and personality on stage. She could just drop her instrument and sing with that incredible voice, and the bass player going boom, 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 and her singing, and it would blow you away. It would you would just be speechless afterwards.
So when you look back on Angel in the Morning, do you have any regrets on passing on that one?
Not really. And it's not that I'm a prude or anything. Lord knows when we're young, we get wild and do things that later on we go, gee, I wish I hadn't done that. You know? I could have waited on that one for a while. So it's not that I'm prude. It's just that I felt like the message in that song was something I didn't want to pass on to a young woman and say it's okay to be a victim of the night.
No, I totally get that. And well, I thought it was also interesting that that your band, Pozo-Seco, and Peter, Paul and Mary both recorded Leaving on a Jet Plane the same evening, and then management decided that yours was not going to be released.
Right. Well, and I never thought that was odd at all, because they were a much bigger group than we were. And Mary also just, you know, they were a very different group from the way we were. I know after being in that management and meeting them, I had met them actually. I was at 15 years old, I was a charter member of the Corpus Christi Folk Music Society.
Wow.
And the guys that I would hang out with were like teachers from schools. One guy worked for Coastal petrol company, and then the guy that ended up being the first manager was a great guitar player, and I forgot what he did. He was an engineer of some kind, Paul Butts, who was our first
Oh, yeah.
manager out of there, he went on to invent a pedal for Gretsch guitar, that wah-wah pedal that he
Right.
was hired on that. So there were a lot of really interesting people in Corpus, and we brought Peter, Paul, and Mary down there for a concert. And I remember standing in the line when I was like 15 or 16 years old, and they would walk by and they shook our hands and we talked like that and everything. And then I was, when I met him again, years again in Grossman's office, when I was 19, 5 years later, I said, I met you in Corpus Christi. And he said, oh, and, I'm sure he didn't remember, but for me, it was like a major moment to be with a manager of Peter, Paul, and Mary, these people that I had all of their records,
Right.
but they had their parts written. They were
Mhm.
actually three, as I understand it, the three of them were performing in Greenwich Village together. And Albert Grossman and Milt Oken got together and said, we need to put a folk group together, blah, blah. And so they got Noel Stuckey, which is Paul,
Right.
and Peter and Mary, who were all doing their solo things, and said,
Yeah.
come and make a folk group. So Milt wrote a lot of the charts for them, and they had a guitar player that taught Peter. I mean, they worked out their stuff. They were
Yeah.
arranged,
I never knew
Whereas
that.
the Pozos, we were just all raised in the same kind of church situation where they didn't have instruments, so we all learned to sing a cappella as little
Right.
kids. And when we got together, we just would sing parts. I can remember sitting there working out things when we were starting out, and I go, whoa, wait a minute. Are we singing the same note there, Lofton? And he'd go, da, da, da. I go, yeah. So, well, don't worry about it. I'll take that note and you take that note. So I think half the time I was singing a tenor part and an alto part, which made it
Wow.
kind of interesting that we didn't follow a particular musical pattern. We went
Right.
by ear.
And all three of you play guitar also.
All played guitar. And then over time, I began to play more instruments
Right.
as time went along.
Well, and after the band broke up, obviously Don Williams went on to country music fame, but you've carved out a niche for yourself too. And certainly the documentary does a great job of showing that, to where as a hit songwriter, having songs recorded by Bette Midler, Mickey Gilley, the Oak Ridge Boys, you're still a prolific songwriter and still performing around the country.
As best I can. Yep, I have taken up the baritone uke. 6 strings may become too many for the arthritic fingers.
I love that instrument though. I play one
I also
too.
play harmonica now, Eric.
Yeah.
I said, if I lose this, I could still do this.
Right. But it's like, I think the gist of the documentary to me though, Taylor, and you can probably say it better, is that not becoming hugely famous was actually a blessing in disguise.
Well, my pal Alan Reynolds, I loved what he said. I hadn't seen really his interview until I saw the movie. And when he said, I think, Pi just saw what happened to a lot of people when they got famous around her, and she just decided that wasn't going to be her way of life.
Right.
And I think that's true because, he was very much like that. When he got Garth Brooks, I called him one day and I said, what's that like, that big pal, And he said, well, I get phone calls like from people in high school that I barely remember who go, I just wanted to call you and congratulate you. Oh, and by the way, I've got this idea for a little business over here in Little Rock where I am now. You wouldn't want to invest in. And, it's like after a while, he had to insulate himself then. He had to filter people. And I never wanted to do that. I always wanted to be able to meet people one-on and not have people have to cushion you or protect you in that way. Then, which makes you kind of, you're like a wallflower and you can go anywhere. You can do whatever you want to do.
But you've been able to do it your way though also.
Well, it's really hard for a woman still in this industry because think about it. Angel of the Morning, that was a woman singing. It was a girl song, right?
Right.
Songwriters are right. Girl songs, boy songs, right?
Right.
This is why I think gender neutrality is important for us to get to, but we'll talk.
Definitely.
But a guy wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
So a man wrote this lyric for a woman to sing.
Right.
And I thought, well, that right off might not work for this kind of song for me.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's what it is. Because you
It's
have
not
a
the
very
right
different,
perspective.
you have a very different perspective and I just couldn't do that.
Yeah. I don't blame you. Well, now, obviously it's paid off. And I mean, with all the awards that this documentary has achieved, and I know it's available on DVD, it can be viewed on, online. It's just amazing. And Nobody Famous is out now, but I want to make sure for our viewers also, Taylor, that they know where to go for your social media. And you were talking about the the Facebook and everything else, and you're still performing, you're still songwriting. How could our viewers keep up with Taylor Pye?
Well, we are all over Facebook, the little record company that Catherine Harrison and I started 15 years ago. This is our 15-year celebration. We're in the process of making a collection of 20 songs of all the different artists since I've been archiving my music on there, but also looking for other people that I think are those kinds of people that are just as good as anybody you're going to hear on national TV or in the world,
Right.
but they're not probably ever going to be as famous. But we need to archive music that's acoustic, because whether or not people think it, it could be someday it doesn't exist anymore.
Well, you know, and I think you can really tell a great song when you strip it down to its essence with just a voice and an acoustic.
I'm with you. I'm so with you, Eric. And I don't want to lose that form of music, even though electronics are taking everything over. Our technology is, we have so excelled in that, and yet it's like that song I wrote about, for all of our progress, so little has changed when it comes to things like we can't seem to have peace with each other. We can't seem to really get rid of the hate and the differences between us. We can't seem to come to the table and talk again. And I sometimes my friends and I go, didn't we go through this in the 60s?
It's like making that full circle. It's like, as much as things have changed, a lot of things.
For all of
haven't
our
in culture.
progress, so little has changed. It was
Right.
the first album that I did. And yeah, and when I played it for Alan Reynolds, I remember he sat there and he listened to the whole album, and all the songs are my own. I said, I want to do an album with all, and I'm going to pick them, and I want to do them like I've always wanted to do them. Jack's Tracks was getting ready to close down. I knew Big Pal was selling it to Garth. Everything was going to change. And you
Right.
know, Alan Reynolds never charged me a dime for studio time after we worked together when he was with Jack Clement. And that's where I met him in those days, Jack Clement days. And they never charged me, no matter what so I had the best studio in town to work in.
Right.
And that's kind of been my life, all my life. People, I feel like, you remember those stories about women writers back in the 1800s who would sit in the Victorian houses?
Right.
Some great aunt or something would provide them the income so they could survive and just do their art.
Totally.
I feel like that's been my blessing. I mean, it's like amazing. I'm amazed myself.
Well, you know, it's so incredible, though. You're such an inspiration that, you know, at this age, too, you keep creating, you keep playing, you keep writing songs, performing, and helping other artists along the way also, Taylor.
That's big with me, especially now. I'm ready to hand over the reins and find the young people that do have messages that are real positive for us, because I have faith in this country that we live in, and I think we did start something that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world.
And
most countries are based either on ethnicity or something else, you know, and we're everything. We're the melting pot. So,
Right.
I
And the
have
music
faith and I
that
trust.
you and Pozo-Seco did even still stands up today.
I saw a Canadian DJ recently for Valentine's Day, played like 6 of our songs. And I wrote him a note the next day and I said, thanks so much. That was really sweet of you. And he says, no problem. Anytime, Pie. And
So now,
I like
so now you're
having
big
those
in,
kinds of relationships.
you're big in Canada now.
Yeah.
You might have to do a
Well,
tour up there.
actually, yes. I have several Canadian stations up there that really like my work, and we've gotten some airplay in Spain and different areas. Just little things happen.
That's amazing. Just amazing. Well, I want to make sure our viewers, you need to watch this new documentary, Nobody Famous, because she is famous in her own way. And you want to check out our music and also the record label, Puff Bunny Records. Taylor Pye, it's great having you on the show. Congratulations on all the success and doing it your own way.
Thank you, Eric. Blessings to all.
Sponsored by the Big 98, Nashville's #1 for new country and the home of the Bobby Bones Show.